Jake Morrison stepped off the transport shuttle and onto the docking platform of the Galactic Council station. The massive structure floated in the darkness of space like a silver wheel, spinning slowly around the distant blue planet Kepler 442b. He carried a simple black briefcase in his left hand and wore a plain, gray suit that looked unremarkable compared to the exotic clothing and armor of the alien beings moving around him. The station buzzed with activity as representatives from 12 different species went about their daily business. Jake walked through the main corridor, his brown eyes taking in everything while maintaining the calm expression of a seasoned diplomat. He had done this walk many times before on different worlds and stations, always carrying the hopes of Earth in his briefcase and the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Tall reptilian creatures with scales that shimmered like green glass moved past him in groups. These were the Zephyrians, warriors from a hot world where strength meant survival. Their eyes followed Jake as he passed, and he could hear them speaking in their harsh language about the weak human who dared to walk among them. Jake understood every word but kept his face blank, showing no sign that he knew what they were saying. Near the food courts, clusters of insect-like beings with metal parts grafted onto their bodies watched him through compound eyes that glowed with electronic light. The Vorthans had replaced half their bodies with machines long ago, believing that flesh was weakness. They calculated his walking speed, his heart rate from thermal readings, and the probability that he posed any threat to their plans. Their computers told them he was harmless. In the upper levels of the station, beings made of pure energy floated in special containment suits that let them interact with solid matter. The Etherians had been traveling the stars for over 1,000,000 years, and they looked at Jake the way an adult might look at a child playing with toys. To them, humanity was a species that had barely learned to leave their home planet, unworthy of serious consideration. Jake reached the central hub of the station where the main council chambers waited. The doors were 30 feet tall and made from a metal that could survive the explosion of a star. Guards from 6 different species stood at attention, their weapons powered but not drawn. They searched Jake with scanners that could detect everything from hidden weapons to genetic modifications, but they found nothing unusual about the human diplomat. The chambers themselves were built like an amphitheater, with seats arranged in circles around a central speaking area. Each species had their own section with environmental controls suited to their biology. The Zephyrians sat in an area with higher gravity and warmer temperatures. The Vorthans preferred cooler air with higher radiation levels that would kill most organic beings. The Etherians floated in a section where the very air glowed with energy fields. Jake took his assigned seat in the human section, a simple chair with basic life support. He placed his briefcase on the small table in front of him and opened it, revealing neat stacks of papers, data tablets, and trade proposals. Everything looked perfectly normal for a diplomatic mission, focused on opening new markets for Earth's agricultural products and rare minerals. The session began with the formal ceremonies that had been followed for thousands of years. Each species representatives stood and spoke their traditional greeting in the ancient language of the first galactic civilization. Jake stood when his turn came and spoke the words in perfect pronunciation, his voice carrying clearly through the chambers. Acoustic system, the Zephyrian ambassador, a massive creature named Vexcrawl, rose from his seat with movements that made his armor plates scrape against each other. His voice rumbled like distant thunder as he spoke about the strength of his people and their commitment to galactic order. His yellow eyes never left Jake during his speech, and there was something in that gaze that made the hair on the back of Jake's neck stand up. The Vorthan representative, a being called Unit Prime 7, spoke next with a voice that sounded like it came from a machine. Every word was calculated and precise as it outlined the logical benefits of cooperation between species. But Jake noticed that its optical sensors kept scanning him, as if trying to solve some puzzle that its computers could not understand. The Etherian delegate, an ancient being known as Bright Star Eternal, communicated through patterns of light that the station's computers translated into words. It spoke of the long view of history and the importance of patience in all things. Yet even as it preached patience, Jake could sense an eagerness in its energy patterns that did not match its words. As the morning sessions continued, Jake participated in discussions about trade routes, mineral rights, and technology exchanges. He answered questions about Earth's production capabilities and asked his own questions about galactic markets. To anyone watching, he appeared to be exactly what he claimed to be, a middle-aged human diplomat trying to secure better deals for his homeworld, but Jake noticed things that troubled him. Security guards stood in positions different from the standard protocols he had memorized. Energy readings from his scanner pen, disguised as a simple writing instrument, showed weapons systems activated throughout the station. Most disturbing of all, several species representatives kept glancing at each other with the kind of looks that suggested they shared a secret. During a break in the sessions, Jake walked to the observation deck and looked out at the stars. His reflection in the reinforced glass showed a man who looked tired from too many diplomatic missions and too many late nights studying alien cultures. His brown hair was starting to show gray at the temples, and lines around his eyes spoke of years spent smiling at beings who might consider humans their next meal. He thought about his wife Mary back on Earth, probably tending to their small garden behind their house in Colorado. She thought he worked for the State Department's Cultural Exchange Program, traveling to different worlds to promote understanding between species. She had no idea that her husband carried secrets that could start or prevent wars between civilizations. Jake's earpiece crackled with a soft tone that only he could hear. It was a message from Earth, transmitted through quantum entanglement communicators that no alien technology could detect or intercept. The message was simple, 3 words that made his blood run cold. Storm clouds gathering. He walked back toward the council chambers, his diplomatic smile firmly in place, but his mind now focused on details he had been trained to notice. The number of guards had increased. Maintenance workers were in areas where no maintenance was scheduled. Most telling of all, none of the alien representatives would meet his eyes anymore. Jake Morrison had been a diplomat for 15 years, but his training had begun much earlier and in much darker places. As he took his seat for the afternoon session, he felt old instincts awakening, skills he had hoped never to use again. The briefcase beside him held more than trade proposals, and the man carrying it was more than he appeared to be. The afternoon session dragged on with discussions about shipping regulations and tariff agreements, but Jake could feel the tension in the air like electricity before a storm. When the session leader announced a 2-hour lunch break, Jake gathered his briefcase and walked toward the station's garden dome as he always did during breaks. The routine was important to maintain. Even though every instinct he possessed was screaming at him to run, the garden dome was one of the most beautiful places on the station, a massive transparent bubble filled with plants from dozens of worlds. Trees with silver leaves grew next to flowers that glowed with their own inner light. Streams of water flowed through carefully designed channels, creating a peaceful sound that helped diplomats relax between difficult negotiations. Jake had eaten lunch here many times before, enjoying the quiet beauty while reviewing his notes for the next session. Today felt different from the moment he stepped through the entrance. The usual maintenance workers were nowhere to be seen, and the few other visitors seemed nervous, leaving quickly after brief glances in his direction. Jake walked along his usual path toward the central fountain, but his enhanced hearing picked up sounds that did not belong in a peaceful garden. The soft whisper of weapons being charged, the barely audible scratch of claws on metal, the electronic hum of targeting systems coming online. Jake reached the fountain and sat on his usual bench, placing his briefcase beside him and opening it as if to review trade documents. His fingers found the hidden switches built into what looked like an ordinary pen, and he activated systems that had been disguised as simple diplomatic tools. Threat assessment protocols came online in his enhanced vision, and suddenly the garden dome became a tactical battlefield overlaid with danger indicators and escape route calculations. The attack came from 3 directions at once, just as Jake's training had taught him to expect from a well-planned ambush. Zephyrian shock troops emerged from behind the crystal formations near the eastern wall. their reptilian forms moving with deadly grace as plasma weapons powered up in their clawed hands. From above, Vorthan assassins dropped from concealed positions. In the dome's framework, their cybernetic limbs unfolding weapons that had been built into their modified bodies. Energy signatures flared to life as Etherian operatives revealed themselves near the western entrance. Their containment suits, glowing brighter as they prepared to unleash devastating energy attacks. The aliens had planned for a quick execution of one unarmed human diplomat, but Jake Morrison was not the man they thought they were killing. His body moved before his conscious mind could process the threat, muscle memory and enhanced reflexes taking control as he rolled behind the fountain structure. Just as the first plasma bolts scorched the air where he had been sitting milliseconds before, the briefcase in Jake's hands seemed to unfold like a flower, revealing components that had been disguised as innocent paperwork and office supplies. Trade documents became armor plating that snapped into place across his chest and arms. A simple calculator transformed into a compact energy weapon that hummed to life in his grip. Even his diplomatic credentials served a purpose: the plastic cards containing microcircuits that jammed alien targeting systems and communication frequencies. The first Zephyrian warrior charged around the fountain with monomolecular claws extended, confident that no human could match their species' natural speed and strength. Jake met the attack with movements that seemed to defy physics, his enhanced body processing combat algorithms that let him predict and counter every strike before it was fully committed. His hand found the weak point between the warrior's armor plates, and a precisely delivered nerve strike sent the massive alien crashing to the ground unconscious but alive. Two more Zephyrians closed in from different angles, their tactics flawless by their species standards but predictable to someone who had studied their combat methods for years. Jake moved like flowing water between their attacks, using their own momentum against them as he redirected claws that could cut through steel into the crystalline formations around them. Shattered crystal fragments filled the air like deadly snow, but Jake's enhanced reflexes let him move through the chaos without taking a single cut. The Vorthan assassins realized their cybernetic enhancements were not giving them the advantage they expected against this human. Their targeting computers could not lock onto Jake's position as he moved with fluid unpredictability, and their enhanced strength meant nothing when he refused to engage them in direct physical confrontation. Instead, he used the garden's environment against them, turning automated watering systems into electric traps and redirecting their own energy weapons to overload their cybernetic systems. Emergency alarms began wailing throughout the station. As the battle moved beyond the fountain area, Jake's enhanced awareness cataloged every threat while simultaneously calculating optimal responses, his mind processing information at speeds that would have seemed impossible to normal humans. He could track the Etherian energy beings even when they tried to become invisible, his modified vision detecting the electromagnetic signatures they could not fully hide. The council representatives, who had planned his death, watched through security cameras from the safety of their chambers, and Jake could almost feel their growing horror as they realized their intelligence had been catastrophically wrong. This was not just a diplomat who had gotten lucky in an ambush. This was something they had never encountered before, something that moved and fought with capabilities that challenged everything they thought they knew about human limitations. Jake spoke calmly into his collar communicator as he dodged another volley of energy blasts, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. The words he spoke were ones he had hoped never to use, a phrase that would change everything between humanity and the galactic community. The response came back immediately through quantum-encrypted channels, and Jake felt something deep inside him shift as artificial limiters that had kept him appearing human began to disengage. The aliens watching him fight began to understand that they had made a terrible mistake. If this was what humanity sent as a diplomat, what did that say about their actual military forces? The implications were too frightening to fully comprehend. But Jake Morrison was about to show them exactly what those implications meant. The Garden Dome had become a battlefield, but the real war was just beginning, and the Galactic Council had no idea what they had unleashed upon themselves and their civilizations. The battle had moved from the Garden Dome into the station's central corridor, where Jake found himself facing 12 elite operatives from 3 different species. The diplomatic mask he had worn for 15 years had finally fallen away, replaced by something coldly professional that made the temperature in the corridor seem to drop several degrees. He stood in the center of the wide hallway, surrounded by the best warriors the galaxy had to offer, but his breathing remained steady and his posture relaxed. Jake touched his collar communicator with 2 fingers, activating a channel that bypassed every security system the aliens possessed. His voice carried clearly through the corridor as he spoke words that would change everything between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. The response that crackled back through quantum-encrypted channels made several of the alien warriors step backward involuntarily. Though they could not understand the human language being spoken, the change in Jake began slowly, like sunrise creeping across a dark landscape. His muscles became more defined as hidden bio-augmentations activated throughout his body, releasing chemicals and engaging mechanical systems that had been dormant for years. His eyes began to glow with a faint blue light as enhanced neural processing came online, and his movements gained a fluid quality that seemed to ignore the laws of physics that govern normal beings. The Zephyrian squad leader, a veteran warrior named Krexvoth who had survived battles across a dozen worlds, realized he was looking at something that should not exist. This human had been modified in ways that went beyond anything in galactic records, enhanced with technology that made their own combat augmentations look primitive by comparison. Krexvoth had killed enhanced beings before, but Jake Morrison moved with a precision that suggested his modifications were not just mechanical or chemical, but something far more advanced. Jake's voice echoed through the corridor as he addressed his attackers, and his words carried the weight of absolute certainty. He told them they were about to learn why humanity's greatest diplomat was also their most dangerous weapon, a member of Earth's secret Project Olympus that had been developing super soldiers for decades in preparation for exactly this kind of situation. The aliens had judged humanity by their peaceful explorers and traders, never realizing that every human they had met was also a potential weapon of war. The battle that followed moved through multiple decks of the station as Jake used the environment itself as his ally. He turned artificial gravity generators into traps that sent his enemies floating helplessly toward walls lined with emergency foam that hardened on contact. Life support systems became obstacles as he redirected airflow to create wind tunnels that knocked flying enemies off course and altered atmospheric pressure to disrupt the breathing patterns of beings who needed specific gas mixtures to survive. The Zephyrians brought their finest warriors, creatures who had mastered combat techniques that had been refined over thousands of years of warfare. They found their centuries of martial arts training useless against Jake's combat algorithms, systems that could predict and counter their moves before they were fully committed. Their natural strength and speed, which had made them the most feared warriors in their sector of the galaxy, seemed insignificant compared to Jake's enhanced capabilities. The Vorthans deployed their most advanced cybernetic soldiers, beings who had replaced so much of their original biology with mechanical parts that they were more machine than organic life. Their enhanced strength could crush steel, their reaction times were measured in microseconds, and their targeting systems could track multiple fast-moving objects simultaneously. They discovered that their technological superiority meant nothing against human adaptability, as Jake found weaknesses in their designs that even their creators had not considered. Each alien species had brought weapons and tactics that had proven successful against every enemy they had ever faced, but Jake countered them with techniques they could not comprehend. He moved through electromagnetic fields that should have disrupted his nervous system, survived energy attacks that should have vaporized organic tissue, and demonstrated strength levels that defied what their sensors said was possible for a being of his size and apparent mass. The Etherians, beings of pure energy who had transcended physical form millions of years ago, found themselves facing equipment that had been specifically designed to disrupt their essence. Jake's weapons projected fields that interfered with their energy matrices, forcing them back into solid matter where they became vulnerable to physical attacks. Their ancient wisdom and vast experience meant nothing when faced with technology that treated their greatest strength as just another problem to be solved. Jake fought his way through the station's security center where automated defense systems tried to target him with weapons designed to stop invasion fleets. The systems failed to lock onto him as his suit generated false signatures that confused their sensors, and his enhanced reflexes let him move through laser grids and plasma barriers that would have killed normal humans instantly. He reached the command consoles and began uploading programs that turned the station's own defenses against his enemies. The surviving council members watched from their sealed chambers as security feeds showed them something that challenged everything they believed about human limitations. Jake Morrison moved through their most elite forces like they were children playing at war, demonstrating capabilities that suggested Earth had been preparing for galactic conflict since the day humans first learned they were not alone in the universe. The truth began to dawn on them as they watched Jake systematically dismantle their carefully planned ambush. Every human diplomat, trader, and explorer they had encountered over the years had been gathering intelligence on alien capabilities, while appearing to pursue peaceful goals. The Council's treachery had not just triggered a fight with one enhanced human, but had provided Earth with the perfect justification to abandon any pretense of being a peaceful species interested only in trade and cultural exchange. Jake's enhanced hearing picked up the desperate communications being sent to alien home fleets, pleas for immediate military support that revealed the depth of their panic. The station's AI systems, compromised by infiltration protocols he had been carrying in his diplomatic credentials, began working against the aliens who had built and operated them for decades. Jake Morrison was no longer pretending to be just a diplomat, and the galaxy was about to learn what that meant for everyone who had underestimated humanity's true nature and capabilities. The surviving aliens regrouped in the station's command center, their desperate fingers working frantically at control panels as they sealed blast doors that were designed to withstand the explosion of small stars. Emergency lighting cast red shadows across their faces as they activated every automated defense system the station possessed, turning their sanctuary into a fortress bristling with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Their communications arrays worked overtime, sending coded messages across the galaxy, begging their home fleets for immediate military support and warning them that humanity was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The Vorthan commander, Unit Prime 7, processed tactical data through its enhanced computer brain while its remaining organic components experienced something it had not felt in decades, since most of its fear responses had been replaced with logical circuits. Its calculations showed that Jake Morrison had eliminated over 60% of their forces in less than 20 minutes, moving through elite warriors like they were untrained civilians. The mathematical projections for their continued survival dropped with each passing second. Jake stalked through the darkened corridors outside the command center, his enhanced senses tracking each remaining opponent through walls and floors that provided no concealment from his modified vision. The station's life support systems fed him information about breathing patterns and heartbeat rhythms, while electromagnetic sensors built into his equipment detected the power signatures of alien weapons and cybernetic implants. He could hear their whispered conversations through ventilation systems, smell their fear through air recyclers, and feel the vibrations of their movements through the deck plating beneath his feet. The hunters had become the hunted, and beings who had dominated battlefields across the galaxy now experienced primal terror for the first time in their lives. They huddled in alcoves and maintenance shafts, clutching weapons that had failed them repeatedly, while Jake moved through their hiding places with the patience of a natural predator. He appeared behind them like a shadow-given substance, striking with precisely measured force that left them unconscious but alive, because even in his enhanced state he remembered his diplomatic mission and the importance of leaving witnesses to carry the message back to their civilizations. The Etherean known as Bright Star Eternal attempted to use its energy form to hide within the station's power conduits, but Jake's equipment included sensors specifically designed to track beings of pure energy. When the ancient creature tried to overload the station's reactor as a final desperate gambit, Jake was already there waiting with containment fields that forced it back into solid matter where it became vulnerable to neural disruptors that shut down its consciousness without permanent damage. Jake reached the sealed blast doors of the command center and placed his hand against the metal surface, feeling the vibrations of the terrified beings on the other side. The doors were 3 feet thick and made from materials that could survive direct hits from antimatter weapons, but Jake's equipment included molecular disruptors that had been developed specifically for situations where conventional methods would not work. The metal began to dissolve in a perfect circle, creating an opening just large enough for him to step through. The Vorthan commander raised its weapons as Jake entered the command center, but its targeting computer still could not lock onto him as his suit continued to generate false signatures that confused alien sensors. Its voice synthesizer crackled with electronic static as it attempted to negotiate, offering Jake safe passage off the station in exchange for ending what it called his rampage against innocent beings who had only been following orders from their superiors. Jake's response came through the station's communication system, his voice carrying clearly to every remaining alien on the facility and to the council members who listened from their sealed chambers. He told them they had made their choice when they decided to murder an ambassador under a flag of truce, violating laws that had governed diplomatic relations for thousands of years. Now they would learn why humans were feared by those few civilizations that understood what humanity really represented in the galactic community. As Jake systematically dismantled their defenses, using their own security systems against them and turning their fortress into a trap that caught them instead of protecting them, he revealed the deeper truth that would reshape galactic politics forever. Earth had been preparing for this conflict since the day humans first learned they were not alone in the universe, and every peaceful contact between humans and aliens had been part of an intelligence-gathering operation that spanned decades. Every human diplomat who had smiled and shaken alien appendages had been trained to assess military capabilities and identify strategic weaknesses. Every human trader who had negotiated commercial agreements had been mapping supply lines and resource distribution networks. Every human explorer who had marveled at alien wonders had been cataloging defensive positions and technological capabilities. The Council's treachery had not just attacked one diplomat but had provided Earth with the perfect justification to abandon any pretense of being a peaceful species. The remaining Council members realized with growing horror that they had not just made a tactical error but had triggered a war against an enemy that had been quietly preparing for this moment while pretending to be interested only in peaceful coexistence and mutually beneficial trade relationships. Earth's primitive technology suddenly made terrifying sense when viewed through the lens of military preparation rather than peaceful exploration, because it had all been designed specifically to counter the advantages that alien civilizations thought made them superior to humanity. Jake's enhanced vision detected the quantum communicators hidden throughout the command center, devices that the aliens thought were undetectable by human technology. He began broadcasting on their frequencies, sending messages directly to alien fleet commanders and planetary defense networks throughout the galaxy. His words were simple and delivered in perfect pronunciation of each species' language, telling them that their governments had committed an act of war against humanity, and that the consequences were now beginning to unfold across space. The stations. External sensors showed new contacts appearing at the edge of sensor range, ships dropping out of hyperspace with energy signatures that did not match any known human vessels in galactic databases. The aliens realized with crushing despair that their intelligence about human military capabilities had been as wrong as their assessment of Jake Morrison, and they were about to face the true strength of a species that had hidden its nature behind diplomatic smiles and peaceful intentions. Jake Morrison stood before the council chambers, where the surviving alien representatives cowered behind emergency barriers that hummed with enough energy to stop a small army. His diplomatic suit was torn and scorched from battle, but his posture remained straight and professional as he looked through the transparent aluminum at the beings who had tried to murder him under a flag of truce. His enhanced voice carried clearly through their defenses as he spoke words that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come, the main viewport behind. Jake revealed humanity's response to the Council's treachery, and the site made several alien representatives collapse in their seats with despair. Earth's fleet had arrived in overwhelming force, their black hulls emerging from hyperspace like sharks rising from dark water. These ships bore no resemblance to the small exploration vessels and merchant craft that aliens had grown accustomed to seeing from humanity, because they represented Earth's true military capability that had been hidden until this moment of betrayal made concealment unnecessary. Admiral Lisa Hayes contacted the station directly from the flagship of the human fleet, her image appearing on every screen throughout the facility as she addressed the cowering council members. Her uniform was crisp and professional, but her eyes held the cold determination of someone who had spent years preparing for this exact scenario. She informed the aliens that they had committed an act of war against the Terran Federation by attempting to assassinate Ambassador Morrison, while he operated under full diplomatic immunity according to laws that the galactic community itself had established. The council members listened in growing horror, as Admiral Hayes explained that Earth's response had been authorized under Article 7 of the Galactic Accords, which granted any species the right to defend itself with full military force when their diplomatic representatives were attacked during official negotiations. The same laws that the aliens had used to justify their own military actions for centuries now protected humanity's right to respond with devastating effectiveness to this unprovoked assault on their ambassador behind the Admiral's ship. More human vessels continued to drop out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their numbers growing until the space around the station looked like a convention of predators gathering for a feast. These were not exploration ships or research vessels, but pure instruments of war, designed with one purpose in mind and equipped with weapons that alien intelligence agencies had never detected. During their surveillance of human space, Jake addressed the aliens one final time, his words carrying the weight of prophecy as he explained the fatal error they had made in judging humanity by their peaceful intentions rather than their capacity for violence. They had mistaken Earth's preference for diplomacy over warfare as an inability to wage it effectively, never understanding that humans had spent their entire history perfecting the art of conflict while simultaneously developing the wisdom to avoid it whenever possible. The truth that Jake revealed would reshape every alien civilization's understanding of humanity's place in the galactic community. Every human they had ever met had been a soldier first, regardless of whatever other role they appeared to be playing in the peaceful interactions between species. Farmers who grew food for trade were also trained in logistics and supply chain warfare. Scientists who shared research were also experts in developing countermeasures against alien technology. Artists who created beautiful works that pleased alien aesthetics were also skilled in psychological operations that could influence enemy morale. Earth's children had been born into a world that had known constant conflict for millennia, where survival required both the ability to make war and the wisdom to choose peace whenever possible. When the galactic community forced humanity to abandon their preference for peaceful solutions, they had selected the one species in the known universe that had spent thousands of years learning how to fight effectively against any enemy under any conditions. The alien fleets that scrambled to respond across the galaxy discovered that human ships were already in position around their key worlds, having arrived through routes that bypassed every detection network and early warning system their civilizations possessed. The traders who had seemed so eager to establish commercial relationships had been mapping their defenses and identifying strategic vulnerabilities. The explorers who had expressed wonder at alien achievements had been cataloging military installations and resource distribution networks. Jake's diplomatic credentials, which had seemed so innocent when he presented them at the beginning of the session, had contained infiltration programs that were now spreading through galactic communication networks like a virus. Every message the aliens sent to coordinate their response was being monitored by human Intelligence systems that had been quietly inserted into their most secure networks over years of apparently peaceful contact. The Galactic Council faced a choice that would determine the future of their civilizations. They could continue the war they had started by attempting to murder humanity's representative, knowing that they faced an enemy that had been preparing for this conflict while they remained ignorant of the true threat. Or they could accept responsibility for their actions and negotiate a peace that would acknowledge humanity's right to exist as equals in the galactic community rather than subjects to be manipulated and controlled. Admiral Hayes made the consequences of continued hostility crystal clear as her fleet's weapons powered up with energy readings that made alien senses scream warnings about imminent destruction. Earth had not wanted this war, but they had prepared for it with the thoroughness that characterized everything humans did when survival was at stake. The galaxy would learn that peaceful species could also be the most dangerous when their hand was forced by those who mistook kindness for weakness. Jake Morrison had walked onto this station as a diplomat carrying hope for peaceful coexistence between humans and aliens. He would leave as the instrument of humanity's transformation from a species seeking acceptance to one demanding respect through strength. The briefcase that had held trade proposals now contained surrender documents that would reshape galactic politics forever. Because the Council had learned too late that some mistakes could not be undone, the age of humanity hiding their true nature behind diplomatic smiles and peaceful intentions had ended the moment alien weapons targeted their ambassador. What emerged from that betrayal would be a species that maintained their preference for peace, but never again allowed others to mistake that preference for inability to wage war with devastating effectiveness against any enemy foolish enough to threaten Earth's children among the stars.